Hello, everyone, and welcome to Enough to Keep Going. This is episode 155. It's the first deep dive episode for August of 2020. We have some interesting Sony and Microsoft news to go through tonight. It's getting a little fun because we're getting a little bit of back and forth as Sony and Microsoft kind of stand off and start trying to one-up each other on the announcements, as we're getting closer and closer to the fall releases of the new consoles. Before we jump into some of the news stories, though, I am joined by two of my friends and colleagues. DBqHams, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, actually, given everything. But yes, you're right. It is interesting to see the back and forth, and of course the constant game of chicken in terms of more media announcements. So we get small little table scraps here and there, but it's enough to keep us going and keep talking.
It's exciting, but I don't. Well, we'll talk about that as we get into the news stories. Agasicles, you are also gracing us with your presence tonight, and I know I'm looking forward to tonight because Agasicles and I had like kind of a throwdown in the Discord chat about Sony and Microsoft a while back, and I imagine it's going to surface again. And I think I'm going to deflate. Well, I'll deflate the hype a little bit and concede somewhat that Agasicles was right, but not for the reasons he thinks he was. So, how are you doing tonight, Agasicles?
That's a good tease for the podcast there.
I'm not quite certain I would call that a deflation, but we'll go with it and see how well that works out for you.
All right. So, first story. I guess the first segment, we'll call it. Sony and Microsoft peripherals. So, a couple of days ago, as DB said, they kind of played a little bit of chicken. Sony went first when they talked about how some of their peripherals would work. So, they made an announcement where they kind of discussed how current generation PlayStation peripherals would work on the PS5. So racing wheels, arcade sticks, flight sticks will work with PS5 and supported PS4 games. So that would be current PlayStation 4 peripherals. Platinum and gold wireless headsets, as well as third-party headsets that connect via the USB port or audio jack, will work on the PS5. It says the headset companion app is not compatible with the PS5, however. And then it says the DualShock 4 wireless controller and PlayStation officially licensed third-party gamepad controllers will work with supported PS4 games. We'll have a clarification on that in a moment. Getting all this from the PlayStation blog, however. Both PS Move motion controllers and the PlayStation VR aim controller will work with supported PS VR games on PS5. So, of course, they had that little caveat there. So, in their fact page, will the DualShock 4 work with PS5 games? No. We believe that PS5 games should take advantage of the new capabilities and features we're bringing to the platform, including the features of the DualSense wireless controller. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to calling it the DualSense, by the way. But so they did also add the PlayStation camera for the PS4 will work for PS5. Will work with PS5 games for playing supported PSVR games, and they said they'll require an adapter. But if you already own the camera, apparently you won't have to buy the adapter. They'll talk about that later. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the second story because I think they'll play off each other a bit. Story 2, the next day, so Xbox jumped on that and said, they tweeted out, in case you missed it, Xbox Series X is compatible with all Xbox One controllers across all games. Official Xbox One controllers, Xbox Adaptive Controller, Xbox Elite Wireless controllers, designed for Xbox third-party Xbox One controllers and headsets. So they definitely, wanted to clarify, that anything you have will be working on the new Xbox Series X platform. And I think, again, this really just highlights the slightly different strategies that each company is employing. So both of you gentlemen are both Xbox and PlayStation gamers. I'm more of I'm PlayStation, and Prime, who couldn't make it tonight, is the Xbox guy. So, you guys can have a much more direct comparison. So, DB, we'll start with you. Is any of this surprising or disappointing for you?
None of it's surprising. I mean, I think that it is very much leaning into and just following along the idea of that Xbox is a platform, and that PlayStation 5 is a generation, right? Like, the difference for that to me is that as a platform, I'm going to be able to plug and play. I may get different results, but in an Xbox, it's all going to kind of work. In a Sony model, that this is a generational shift, a generational change, which means that doesn't always happen. It very rarely happens that in traditional consoles that you can play your previous controllers, use your previous controllers in current generations. Nintendo not not accounting for.
I was about to jump on you for that.
Yep. But then again, I mean, those are specifically, they were designed with some backwards compatibility in mind. And here we know that there's going to be some backwards capability with PlayStation. We don't know the full extent, but we do know that it is fully backwards compatible for Xbox. So having the ability to reuse your controllers seems in line with that. The bigger difference is that your existing Xbox controllers will work for Series X games, where in PlayStation that's not the case. I think the other piece here, so that piece all is said, the other piece that I find interesting is the Move controllers, the PlayStation Aim, the PlayStation Camera. Like, on the announcement in June, they came out with a new PlayStation camera, a PlayStation 5 camera. And the disappointing thing to me, as someone who has a PlayStation VR sitting in its background here, is that in theory, that new PlayStation 5 camera should have been or will be better technology. It will do better motion tracking. It will do a number of things that the PlayStation 3, 4 era camera that exists now isn't capable of doing. And the fact that they're creating an adapter while still putting out another camera makes me question about how much kind of fidelity that those PlayStation VR 5 games will actually have.
That's a good point. Agasicles, well, go ahead. What are your thoughts on the two strategies here?
Yeah, you're gonna have to rein me in, because I'm probably a little bit all over the place with this. So, man, and there's I don't know who to beat down more. So on one hand, there's been a lot of opinions there've been a lot of negative opinions about what Sony announced and the strategy that Sony is taking towards peripherals. I'm in the DBQ camp, where I'm like, okay, this wasn't expected. You've never been able to use the last generation's controller with the next generation PlayStation. You've always had to buy a new one.
Well, I also want to, real quick, I want to insert one comment too. I think it's a good thing that they're at least allowing it, because there was a time I was exploring buying a PlayStation Vita simply for the whatever they called the streaming capability from the PS4 to the Vita.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of it didn't work well, and there's a lot of games where it wouldn't work because the PS Vita had a different control scheme, and so I can't play Horizon Zero Dawn without some weird aftermarket thing that doesn't quite work because it didn't have the map up right button. So they're at least saying, hey, they're going to support the PS4 game. So that again, that's a good thing, and like you said, it's not really unexpected.
So let me just make sure I check that. So you're saying you're happier that you can bring your old controller to the new console to play the old games, because in the past using the new controller with the old games proved problematic?
there was a disconnect.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it was a new or versus old. It was just, hey, at least they're supporting it so that I can play PS4 games the way they were meant, like with the control scheme they were meant to be played with.
Yes.
And I know that's not a huge, there's not going to be a huge difference, but it's just, it's there, and I've seen it as a problem in the past with PlayStation stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's always that little bit of jank. But again, so now, so I was up with the first comment I made. I'm down with the comment you made though, because I'm still not pleased with what we know about PlayStation 5 backwards compatibility, right? And that we have
lack thereof.
Right.
What we know.
We have hopes and claims and promises and nothing definitive. So I'm not banking on it, right? I mean, right now I'm in the throes of making the decision of whether or not I'm going to, this generation I kept my PlayStation 3 because there was an architectural break between the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and that was the only way that I felt I was guaranteed to be able to play my PlayStation 3 games. There is no technological reason why I should have to keep my PlayStation 4. But I'm sitting here poised on the edge of whether or not I will keep it or not. And if there's a business reason why I have to keep it because they don't support entirely the entire PlayStation 4 library in terms of backwards compatibility, I'm going to wind up getting rid of it in spite, probably. But it's going to teeter into whether or not I get a PlayStation 5 at all. So there's lots of crossed and mixed signals, right, with this thing, and this is my point, is that it's complicated and it's not as clean. The other comment I'll make is, I mean, you'd like to go rah, the Move controllers work and everything with the PlayStation 5, but great Scott, like if they had opened that Pandora's box, I might be done, because my entire problem, DBQ remembers these conversations, my entire problem with the PSVR was it was highly convoluted and very confusing in their messaging of what you had to have with that thing to make sure that it worked, right? And it was super expensive to buy a full kit with everything where you didn't have any questions, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's good that they're bringing those peripherals forward. I mean, I don't know what else they could have done, given that it was as bad. It was messaged, in my perspective, it was messaged as poorly as it was when the PSVR initially launched. Like, I waited, I was on the edge of buying it or not. I waited a few months until, like, all the confusion stopped, until I was like, I felt like I was clear what I would have to buy and what that cost was to play the vast majority of PSVR games. That all being said, my problem with the PlayStation strategy and the messaging is, again, I don't know that there's a technological reason why that controller couldn't work with PlayStation 5 games. But so it feels like this is another, not quite the hubris of the PlayStation 3 launch, but it feels like we didn't make it ubiquitously compatible because we didn't have to. We don't have a business reason to. We're not in a weak position, right? It would have been nice, but whatever. So that combined with some of the other things that have gone on in the last few weeks feels very much like, there are things that they are doing because they don't have to, not because they're technologically hard or much less impossible.
Does DB, so is that a nefarious business tactic, or is it just, you see a little bit, like I would assume, like Agasicles, I know that you're a proponent more of like the platform, as DB talked about with the Xbox, with the Microsoft strategy. Is that just something that, I guess my question, like, why would you consider it a bad thing from like Sony or like hubris to say like, well, this is one product and now we're having a new product? Go, DB, why don't you respond for that?
I will cede my time to the gentleman who raised the argument.
Okay.
So, because I think that is. Go ahead, I guess.
Just for that reason, right? I mean, this is a year, and I know you can't backtrack on the R&D that you already invested in, the design decisions that you made, a year before you knew the pandemic was going to be here. But this is a year where there is a vastly huge number of people who are unemployed, right? You're going to get the PlayStation 5 controller in a box. In a lot of households, you're going to need a second controller, right? So again, this is the gymnastics I went through, and I was probably going to talk about this a little bit later, but if I'm if I'm a 20-something, not saying that the 20-somethings are the users we need to care about the most, but if I'm a 20-something and I'm poised on the edge to buy a PlayStation 5, the reality is, like, we talk about that being we quibble about that being like a $300, $400, $500 purchase, but the reality is that's probably closer to a $1,000 purchase by the time it's all done, right? It's a $400 console. Now I'm gonna add a second controller, right? So I'm at $450. I'd probably buy 3 games, right, to get started. That's $180. So, you start rounding up on tax. You probably throw in a couple seasons in today's day and age. You probably throw in a handful of season passes along with that, right? Pretty soon you're up to $800. So it just feels like an number one. It feels like an unnecessary thing, and it feels like, as you read through the list, right, there are all these if-then statements throughout it. Well, you can use this on a Sunday when the moon is blue, and then, if you're playing this game from console generation 15, right? It's like, it's just not clean, and it's not easy, and it's not simple, particularly for parents who are not technologically oriented, and it just feels unnecessary. I mean, so that's, it's not necessarily, I don't mean that it's not nefarious or deliberate, like, let's what's how much revenue will we return on 100 million users buying PlayStation 5s who all have to buy an extra controller in our peripheral revenue for the quarter, right, out of the PlayStation? I don't think it's that convoluted, but I do think it's like, hey, it'll cost us X amount to make the PlayStation 4 controller, right, compatible with PlayStation 5 games. Do you want us to do it or not? And I feel like it's a shoulder shrug, right? It's a why would I do that?
How do you? Okay, DB, you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, actually, I just want to muddy the waters even more, right? Like, all of this is these are not technological decisions, other than the fact, like, yes, the DualSense is going to, revolutionize 3D audio through your controller. It's the 6-axis struggle of the PlayStation 5. Like, if games actually do that, then is it a gimmick designed around something, or is it essential to gameplay? But these are boardroom decisions much more than they are development decisions. Because you're, like you said, Agasicles, it is making it work, and they're all Bluetooth connected. It should not be drastically different. The other challenge and the muddying the waters that I want to do here is, so you have a game like Bug Snacks, right? This is announced as a PlayStation 5 game. It was, but it's also coming to PlayStation 4 because of the way that PlayStation has messaged their games and their kind of intergenerational. Do you actually get a pass? Does it upgrade automatically? Do you not get, in certain, compared to Microsoft's smart delivery? So if Bug Snacks is a multiplayer game, that if somebody has the PlayStation 4 version and it may or may not work on PlayStation 5, but now as a parent, going back to Agasicles' piece, and this is what made me think of it, as a parent coming down the shelves, I'm going to see 2 SKUs. I'm going to see PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 for the same game, and now the game may be the same, but also then the controllers aren't necessarily going to work from one to the other as well. And so it creates almost a Nintendo level of market confusion in terms of what pairs to what, and what do you need to be able to run any piece of software effectively.
Right, and then you add to that, right? If you're buying in a household, right, and let's say you do keep your last generation console, right, and again we're talking about a family unit, not an atypical scenario, right? You have a PlayStation 4 in one room, you have the PlayStation 5 in another. You want to buy Bug Snacks because it's a family game, and you don't get an automatic upgrade, right? Which system do you buy it for, and how many controllers do you have to have for which system to know that it's going to play well? Right, if it's the PlayStation 4 version and I put it on the PlayStation 5, A, does it work? B, is it going to work with one PlayStation 5 controller and one PlayStation 4 controller? Right, it's just a lot of unnecessary stuff. I will say that the technology break, and this is where we can directly compare it to the Xbox strategy. The technology break that I do see, and again, it's a thing that would make me cranky, is I routinely have problems with Sony stuff that is implemented that causes cost, that causes schedule hiccups that are rarely or ever used and don't provide much value. The touchpad. I could care less about the touchpad, right? I only use that stinking thing as a DualShock controller, right? I just use it as the same PlayStation controller that I've literally been using it as since PlayStation 1. Except for the times when there's a game that forces me to use that interface. And what does that always cause? That always causes me to make a negative comment about being forced to use that control interface on that game. So there's an unnecessary piece of that technology there. But that's one of the big technology deltas between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 controllers, and those things don't work quite the same, right? So you know, if you do have a technical reason for making this break, it's a technical reason founded in an implementation that I would have just as soon done without.
Can I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
Bugsnax is not multiplayer. It's only single player, but it was used as an example. Just fact checking myself. Okay.
No, I agree that I was going to, bring up the Sony has potentially an interest in emphasizing PlayStation 5 features and therefore, putting a wall around like the PlayStation 5 interface. I'm kind of with you, Agasicles, though. Like you said, the PS4 controller, I very rarely have to touch the touchpad unless there's like a little bit of a gimmick that makes me swipe it from time to time. But I never used it like a trackpad or anything like that. I will push back a little bit on both of you with regards to confusion for parents. I think for non-techie parents, PlayStation 5 game, PlayStation 5 console, PlayStation 5 controller, that's a very seamless thing. They won't think about it. Well, can I use I really don't think they're going to think about it as much. It's just like in their head, oh, now I have a PlayStation 5 game. I'm going to need the PlayStation 5 stuff. I do agree, though, Agasicles, that having some things that are backwards compatible and some things that aren't, except in other cases, it does add to the confusion. But just, a dedicated PS5 thing, controller with the PS5 console, I can see people just, okay, I'm getting the console now, I got to get the controller with it.
But my thing is, we have so many parents who don't pay attention to SKUs. They don't know about model different. They just know brand names. And then to add to that problem, not that you're wrong, but just saying I would split that percentage right into thirds, right? Maybe there's a third that is reflected by your case. I would contend, like I said, parents don't know SKUs. But the other big thing is a lot of parents like sales. And so all it's going to take is 3-4 months into the life cycle and there to be like a rash of like PlayStation 4 controllers going on sale for like $19.99. And a parent going, hey, I want to buy one of these. Can I use it with the kid's new PlayStation 5? So, I don't know. It's just...
The answer from the Best Buy person is going to be yes. To add to the confusion.
Right, because he's got to move that inventory.
Yeah. Well, technically he wouldn't be lying. So, but yeah, so there are things that I get and things that are annoying. I will say that I use my Xbox controller for the PC, and I like that there aren't gimmicks on it. We'll have to wait and see how gimmicky these PlayStation 5 only features are, or if it's we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So I will.
And overall, like I don't, if we're keeping score, I count this as a dash, as an NA, right? It's not a -1 to PlayStation, +1 to Microsoft. Overall, I think there's a demographic that is going to take it that way, and I think it's an unnecessary poker chip to give up on Sony's part.
Yeah, I think it's basically exactly as DB said. Like, it just is very emblematic of the two approaches that the companies are taking, and that's how I find it interesting. Real quick, I'm going to note, because this is kind of a lead-in to the next story, but Xbox announced Xbox mobile gaming accessories. So they announced that there'd be gaming accessories in the design for Xbox ecosystem last October, and so they've announced them now. They're available for pre-order. and basically prepping for September 15th. So these are, accessories that you can use to like get your mobile phone like nice Xbox level controller, better controls for playing games on your mobile phone. Why September 15th? Because, and this is kind of the more primary story, Project xCloud will be available on Xbox Game Pass Ultimate on September 15th. So this is where I'm kind of going to eat a little bit of crow, because in our Discord debate, I kind of just assumed that xCloud was farther away on the horizon. I didn't actually think it would be that imminent, and I may have missed some kind of hints that it was coming sooner, but I'm also very pessimistic. Like, I was the guy that thought that like Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima would be delayed and re-announced as PlayStation 5 exclusives. So I always err on the side of it's going to take them like a year longer than I think. But Xbox or Project xCloud is going to be available for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers at no additional cost on September 15th. And so, yeah, you'll be able to get some Xbox games streamed to your mobile devices and the Xbox Game Pass app. They did mention some of the games that would be available: Gears of 5 Ultimate Edition, Halo 5 Guardians, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, Minecraft Dungeons, and Sea of Thieves. In addition to many more, there'll be apparently over 100 titles from the Game Pass library to go on xCloud launch. So I think this Agasicles is probably, this is the game changer piece that I think you feel is, well, one, it obviously differentiates Microsoft from Sony, but when we were talking, we were basically discussing how the metrics for success between the two companies were very different. And I think we both agree that the metric of success for Microsoft now is subscribers. And the metric for success for Sony is hardware units sold. My argument was, well, until xCloud's really here and launched, it's still tied at the hip to the Xbox console, so that's still important. But obviously that is not the case anymore. So do you think that the xCloud is going to be able to hit the ground running and kind of get an edge? Like, now, I mean, it's September 15th. It's before the PlayStation and the Series X will launch. Do you think that's going to give them an edge coming up?
I don't know if it gives them an edge. Well, like you mentioned, the companies are taking two different strategies. I agree with you that the metrics of success are definitely different. I wouldn't tie them solely to Game Pass subscriptions, but also, I believe that there's a metrics of success. You may not see it. It may be hard to put optics on that. You may only realize it if you listen to or read Microsoft earnings calls. But I definitely think that there's a metric of success where if, and again, there are pieces of this that I don't know, but let's say if EA Origin is hosted on AWS and Project xCloud takes off and EA sees that and goes, well, we're paying $2 billion to be hosted on AWS. We can host it on Azure for $1.5 billion, right, or whatever. I think that type of a swing, that type of a hosting service swing, would also be in Phil Spencer's favor. I think in a lot of ways that's part of the strategic reason of demonstrating the power of Azure and Microsoft Enterprise Services on Azure via Project xCloud on Android devices and the Xbox itself. I don't know if it gives them an edge in the console war, because again, they're fighting two different battles. Microsoft feels that it's the Xbox division feels that its competitors are AWS and Google. They're touting that they're departing from the notion of being at war with Sony. Again, things I've said is I don't care. I wouldn't care about being at war with Sony anymore. You're hosting your games on my infrastructure, right? So, I mean, in order for it to be a competitive advantage against Sony for the launch, it would have to be a relatively huge ecosystem play, right? It would have to be I do Game Pass, I play on my phone. It only makes sense for me to buy a Series X or what is the low grade console called again? Starts with an L.
Lockhart, whatever.
Yeah, I keep forgetting it. Yep. Yeah, or it makes sense for me to like buy this extra box, right? I always think it's interesting to look at the micro demographic of 20 somethings who are popping over to 30 somethings, right? And getting somewhere in there, getting that raise and going from, being hungry all the time to being able to afford a steak dinner, right? So that micro demographic who goes, hey, I'm going to do Xbox Game Pass, for a year or whatever, and then I'll get a raise and I'll be making enough money to buy Series X. So that might be interesting too. I don't know that this move or this play helps them in a head-to-head war of console units sold. I think it's in Microsoft's favor if people sign up for it. And again, you start eating into that, what's up Nadella talked about, like those 2 billion users who arguably don't want to buy big hardware, big iron, like an Xbox Series X, or can't afford to buy big iron like a Series X.
So I think you kind of addressed the question that was linked in my mind about this is why this date? Like, why mid-September? Is it a server stability piece to get everything ready for Series X when it launches in November? Is it a kind of seeding seeding the marketplace in terms of getting people interested in this ecosystem so that, as you were just saying, Agasicles, now they're ready, they're more invested, it makes more sense for them because they're in that network, that ecosystem? Yeah, we knew it was coming. It really was a question of, it's not tied around a big release, so that's where I was trying to figure out what's the timing piece.
But it is tied around a big release. It's just not the one that a lot of gamers think about. I believe this is tied to the iPhone.
Oh.
Here's what I think. I think I have registered for the iOS variant of the Project xCloud demo. I haven't gotten in yet. The people I have heard from who are in say that the only game you can play on it is like Halo 5. And then there are all sorts of other limitations and problems with it. I think behind the scenes, what's going on is Apple is saying you can have Game Pass on iOS, but I want my 30%, and saying and we don't have to give on that because we have everybody's eyeballs. But remember, the iPhone is very big in the United States, but worldwide, Android rules the world. And so Microsoft has said, we're a big gaming platform. We work better than any cloud streaming platform. We work better than Stadia. Not only is that good for us, but it demonstrates the power to everybody else's hosting platform, right? And we don't need to give you 30%, right? Because we're going to be on Android handsets, which is the vast majority of the world. The other thing that I think might be going on is Microsoft is saying, hey, that Project xCloud, right? That revenue that will eventually be there, that's only going to be $5 of Game Pass. So you guys are only entitled to 30% of the $5. And I think there's a back and forth going on about, no, it's 30% of the $15. I think the reason we're hitting this date is because Microsoft finally threw up their hands and said, you know what, we're not I think from a technology standpoint, I think they've been good for a while. I think they've been holding off to try and work this out with Apple. And I think they finally had enough and said, that's it. We're just going to go ahead and launch the thing worldwide on the platforms that we're on. And if Apple, when Apple sees it, if Apple wants to play, then they'll come to play. And I think they're launching on September 15th to get out ahead of the iPhone fall launch, which has now been delayed until probably October. People probably won't have handsets in their hands until November or December. Now you're going to have iOS people who are gamers seeing all their friends on Android playing Xbox games and go, why don't I have that on my device when, like, I bought this device because it's the best thing in the world, better than all these Android handsets.
Very interesting. Didn't think about that angle. Nice. I don't know. we keep talking about how they have different strategies and different metrics of success, but ultimately, I think the real metric of success is players, right? That's the one thing that they will be fighting over are humans that will be engaging in their entertainment. So, whether it's on the Series X or on the PlayStation, I do think that this is kind of going to. I feel like the timing, it may have something to do with Apple. I also think it has something to do with, like you said, seeding everybody's mentality to say, I can get this on my phone now, and then eventually if I get the console, I can do that if I want, but I don't have to, because I'm perfectly happy playing multiplayer, Halo on my cell phone, with Game Pass and whatever, and my tablet. So yeah, I kind of feel it's still rooted in gaming. I will say that I don't know if the revenue for the hosting is going to be as significant as Agasicles is. So that's kind of like the one point of disagreement we have. But I actually think, I feel like it's much more of a power move against Sony than it perhaps is just like it's been ready to go and they've just been having trouble negotiating.
But I guess my question is, why would Sony care? Like, I mean, what's the
Sony cares because if I'm 25 and I'm not gonna buy a PlayStation and an Xbox, right? And well, whatever, I have to choose between the two. Okay, if I pay for Game Pass, I get all the Xbox stuff, but I also get it on my phone. Sony can't really say that they have that aspect in it. It's getting me into the Xbox ecosystem. And kind of once you're in the Xbox ecosystem, you get Xbox stuff and subscribers. And I can see people. I mean, I'm not going to be a member of Game Pass Ultimate. I'm a PC. Even though I'm a PC gamer, I don't play enough of that stuff to warrant the subscription. And I much prefer Sony exclusive first party titles. So I'm already like out of the subscription service, but I feel like they can win over gamers like me if there's somebody that would say, well, there's enough in the Xbox stuff that I kind of like, and Sony doesn't allow me to stream like that with xCloud. I can get xCloud. Like I just feel like that's such an added value to like the subscription ecosystem versus buying a PlayStation, just having PlayStation games. It could convert people from the Sony camp to the Microsoft camp. Does that make sense? You still have a mutually exclusive players out there, one or the other.
So I agree with you that I see the value in it because I argue that demographic exists. I guess my argument is from what we see and from the actions that companies are taking. What Sony has messaged to me is it doesn't care about ecosystems and it doesn't care about services. I mean, great Scott, PlayStation Now stinking streams to PC at 720p. Like, what in the world is that? I mean, you can't care, right? Like, it can't be anything more than a hobby level thing, like an Apple TV level of care of a product. If you're streaming to the world's most powerful gaming platform at 720p, right? Which is 2 television generations ago now. So I feel like I guess what I feel like is, and what I hear from Sony is, people come to Sony PlayStation because this is where the exclusives that they love exist. And if you are part of that system because that's what you love, there's only one place to get that and to get it at the highest fidelity, and that's on their hardware. So that's why I feel like they would look at Xbox. I mean, they've made no mention of trying to reach those 2 billion gamers who don't buy hardware, right? I mean, they've only talked about the gamers that buy hardware, and I guess I feel like the margin of consumers who subscribe to Xbox Game Pass because they can get it on their Android phone that convert over to people who buy hard iron is in the noise, where I just don't know that Sony would care about it that much.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm that gamer, right? Like, so I'm not going to be converted. But the PlayStation, PS4 got out ahead. That was like, that's the big platform on this current generation. I'm talking about the Call of Duty, Madden type gamers. Okay, do you? I guess you don't think that they're a significant enough demographic, because that their allegiances are up for grabs.
And if they are a big demographic, it appears that Sony's strategy to keep them in their camp is to pay for exclusive content. It's not to put it on phone. I mean, it's just
yeah.
So I mean, I don't.
I'm not saying that both of them are going to work. I can understand both basically perspectives. But I feel like the xCloud move is to say, Microsoft, we think our theory is better, we think our tech will better, and we think we can convert people. They didn't be wrong, but I still think that there's contention for that type of gamer.
Yeah, I mean, look, like two or three layers removed, I don't disagree with you. I agree with you that Microsoft is competing with Sony in as much as they've said, we can't compete with Sony, or we're not going to compete with Sony, so we're going to fight a different war. But once you cross that line of, okay, we're fighting a different war, then I'm in their camp of, our competitors aren't Sony. We're not going for the same type of gamers. We're not going for the same type of space. We fight against the Project xCloud mood goes head to head against Stadia. It doesn't go head to head against anything that Sony has.
DB's been looking like he's bemused the whole time, so I'm kind of hear what he wants to say.
No, I think this is I appreciate the discussion that you gentlemen are having. My bemusement really comes at, that this is. I'm thinking of Civ, right? Like it's not a military victory, it's an economic victory, or it's a cultural victory, right? Like eventually either strategy could be successful, but they're going about it two different ways. And so I'm grateful for the kind of deep dive on this date, because really most of the conversation that I've seen around it has been, oh yeah, it's coming. Great. Here it is. Isn't this great? Moving on, right? Like it is not kind of the industry analysis aspect of why and what the ripples can be. So thank you both for this dialogue, and you both have set up some nice segues into the next couple stories in terms of making it free so that people get in, and also paying off for exclusivity. So
yeah, and it might have been intentional. Maybe. So the next story is we'll go with Microsoft. So we've kind of segued now into like the game strategies. Microsoft recently announced Halo Infinite's multiplayer will be free to play, and so I guess it had been leaked before, but yep, official Halo Twitter account. Halo is for everyone. We can confirm Halo Infinite multiplayer will be free to play and will support 120 FPS on Xbox Series X. More details to be shared later. So, I thought this was actually very interesting and kind of a cool move. I don't know. It's like my head is like my Halo is so rooted in like 2005 like style. Gameplay, whatever. I'm not an Xbox guy, so I don't exactly know when the first Halo was released. But, most games nowadays, they use that free-to-play model. Like you look at all the Battle Royale stuff, they use the free-to-play model and you pay a little extra for the campaign. So it's interesting that Halo is going that direction. And then there was like a little thing in the back of my head where I was like, huh, Bungie went free to play for the most part with Destiny 2, and Halo's going the same direction. So that was kind of a neat tidbit. But what do you think? Do you think that have they announced like microtransactions? Is this going to be profitable for them, or are people just going to play the free to play Halo Infinite and ignore the campaign entirely?
there are some stories out there, some tweets of people supposedly in the know connected with this that have confirmed that there's a battle pass system. I don't know that they have. I think they have said there's not microtransactions in like the loot box type of way, but in some ways, using the word microtransactions starts splitting hairs in terms of what counts it. Like, yeah, could you buy a skin? Sure, that's microtransactions, but is it like a Halo 5 loot box where you don't know what you're going to get? No. So it seems like you're going to be able to, it's going to take the kind of current model of monetization in terms of buying the availability to buy some customization and also have a season pass, battle pass type of progression model for smaller content chunks. I think
Yes.
the other interesting thing, the thing here that, I mean, one, it's great. I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of how you get people into a market, into a game in the current marketplace. Like this is the you know, the market at this point in time. I think the other benefit of what you guys were both just talking about in terms of Game Pass and cloud streaming, like now with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate or Game Pass, like if you download this to play the free multiplayer and you get interested enough, like, okay, I kind of maybe want to see what the story is, or I remember Halo, I want to go back and play the story now. Now it's not like Call of Duty was last year. It's not a $60 game. It's, hey, pay $15 for the month or $10 for the month and get the Halo campaign, right? Maybe you remember to cancel, maybe you don't, but the barrier to entry is not a whole lot for the single player campaign. It's not a whole lot different than buying a battle pass for a season.
Do we know at this point? I don't know that they've been official about saying. Do you require Xbox Live to play Halo free multiplayer on Xbox? I think you do.
There has been some exceptions, but I think you do. But I think the language around this has been consistent with some of the rumors of not, you know, the free to play, the Halo for everyone. Also, the language around some of that initial messaging, they have not addressed it, but it does raise that question of whether or not you will need gold, live, whatever you're calling it, a paid multiplayer system, or if that goes away in this model.
Right. So it. I mean, I think we largely forget, but if I'm not mistaken, PS Plus flipped right from PS3 to PS4. It used to be you could play multiplayer on PS3 without paying for PS Plus, but in the PS4 area you do. With the exception of games that allow you to play multiplayer kind of peer to peer for free, which might include like Fortnite. But yeah, in conjunction with this story, we've also had in the past few days, we've had the whole, you know, there was a strong suspicion and rumors that Xbox Live and Xbox Gold were going away, and that it was all just being wrapped up into this pass, and that the only thing that you could buy was Xbox Game Pass, then there would be no point in them giving games away for free on Xbox Gold. But Microsoft has come out and said that's not the case. You know, so there's still going to be Xbox Live, which gets you Xbox Live Gold. You know, essentially the same thing, and gets you the 2 games free per month, probably for those people who don't want to pay for Xbox Game Pass. So as far as I understand it, on Xbox you'll still have to pay your $65 or whatever it is per month or per year now to play. I guess one question I want to ask, I'll ask both of you. I'll start with DBQ. One of my concerns, and I'd ask whether or not you think it's valid, is once I am letting people subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and I'm rolling that out globally, right, with Project xCloud. I should say it's more of a Project xCloud. It's a question about the interrelation between Project xCloud and Game Pass. So now you get Project xCloud with Game Pass. Once I enable the ability that anybody on that subscription tier can have those games delivered to them via the cloud, does that decentivize me from ever porting some things to PC? Like, why do I need to bother to port them to PC? They can play them on Project xCloud.
I see the argument there. I guess I would ask the question of how different will that infrastructure be in terms of, I mean, how big of a lift is the port, right? Like, and then I guess the other question that's a determining factor there is how significant is the market penetration of Xbox Game Pass? Like if they hit, you know, if they hit Game Pass subscriptions on PC that go beyond what they were selling in Steam numbers on Halo Master Chief Collection, then maybe that question does start to gain some validity. But until the point that that the Steam universe of PC players of Xbox games, shrinks to the point where everybody's just streaming, I think that there's still the value in the porting. And as we've seen, for both Xbox games and PlayStation games, that they have consistently been up in the top sales charts on Steam when they have released.
I would pretty much argue the same thing. If you want my dollars, you need to put it on Steam. But no, I mean, why bother having an Xbox Series X if you can just stream it on whatever device you happen to have in your house? Like, at some point, I feel like, I think the future for them is probably more and more attempting to migrate their user base to a Game Pass like environment, and then just whatever, it just proliferates on whichever hardware they can get it on. I mean, we've heard rumors that they were going to try to get it on the Nintendo Switch, for goodness sake, right? So for now, there's still, and this goes back to your Live or Xbox Live Gold subscription and everything question too. There's still, obviously they still see enough non-Game Pass people, like gamers out there, where platform specific releases are still a thing. Because if they thought everybody was going to be on Game Pass, there'd be no need for it for Live Gold or anything like that. Why bother having a thing where you get 2 free games if you have all the games all the time? Like, it just, I think this is obviously the first salvo, but I don't think that they're converted everybody to the cloud yet. And to be honest, I'm not saying that it's bad. I think that's probably wise, because if you go too fast, I think everybody just, I like to play the games. I think it'd be too much too quickly. We didn't see Stadia take the world by storm. I still think that the conventional marketplace has validity.
So same kind of competitive question as you were asking me. So now, in terms of consoles head to head and gamers, Xbox now has a launch title, theoretically, that is wide open, free to play, big numbers. I don't think, let's assume we're not going Battle Royale yet, but we're still probably going to have 32 or 64 player matches. That has a battle pass, right? So it's easily accessible, easily affordable if you have the hardware. There's a big rah centric movement around the aggro gamer, hyper competitive gamer community with a free to play game that's theoretically a launch title on Xbox. What does Sony do to counter that? Are they not concerned about it? Or is this a +1 in the Xbox column?
I think it's hard for me to say, like, because the problem is Halo and all these games, these Microsoft games, because they're so available on PC, it's almost like an outlet for gamers, like for PlayStation guys like me. If I want to play Halo Infinite, free to play multiplayer, and all I got to do is download the client on Steam a la Crucible. Like, I know that might not be what happens. I understand that we might need like a live thing, but say like I just gotta throw when I'm at work, I log into my Steam account and say, yeah, start downloading that on my PC. When I get home, I can check it out. I've invested nothing I can still buy my PlayStation hardware and get my fantastic, single player experiences. That's the foreshadowing for next week's Gamer Experience show, by the way. And still be able to experience some of these zeitgeist multiplayer games.
Yeah, but
now, go ahead.
You talk about that demographic that you were talking about, though. You talk about 100 million players. I strongly suspect that there are many of those 100 million players that don't also game on PC and buy their PlayStation hardware because it's not a $1,000, $1,500 box that they have to upgrade and figure out all the complexities of being your own personal sysadmin to be an effective PC gamer.
That's a valid point. I think it's going to really depend on how much the zeitgeist carries it, right? I mean, if we look at this back into Xbox and Xbox 360, right? Halo wasn't that why everybody got the Xbox 360? I mean, if you really think about
Halo and Forza. I mean, even though Phil Spencer says we're desperately trying to remove the image that we're just the Halo and Forza box, I agree with you. I think that's what their reputation was built on.
So I think if it takes the world by storm, and that's why the September 15th date, I think, also has to do with the gaming. Like, all this is lined up, so everything's ready, and Halo hits and it takes off. What does PlayStation have to compare? I mean, are like the Call of Duty type gamers, do they care about a Ghost of Tsushima? Do they care about Horizon Zero Dawn 2? Like, I don't. Probably not. I mean, I think those are added value to those players, but they're not. That's not why they bought the PlayStation.
And they don't play them. They don't even know about them. If you're talking anyway, so a tangential question for me: that do you, in your heart of hearts, when you think about those 100 million PlayStation owners, do you think demographically PlayStation owners are multiplayer people? I mean, all those Sony exclusives are all single-player games. There hasn't been a big Sony multiplayer game since, like, MAG on the PlayStation 3.
I will say that most of what I see for PlayStation fans does have to do... The commentary I see is with single-player experiences. That being said, I fully will admit I am probably not playing in the same sandboxes as your multiplayer type, like multiplayer only type gamers. I know a guy, my cousin, he's a big PlayStation guy. He pretty much only plays like Fortnite and Call of Duty and the slew of stuff like that. Like, I mean, I'll say, hey, you need to check out Horizon Zero Dawn, and he'll get it as an added value. And he'll play them and he enjoys them, but that's not the reason he gets the console, because that's like he likes those competitive experiences. And I mean, he's always been a PlayStation guy, so I don't know if it's enough to convert him, but he's the guy that I'm talking about that would be converted by something like this. If the zeitgeist moves for everybody playing on PlayStation to playing on Game Pass or whatever we want to call it, I feel like he can be flipped. Do I know if Sony cares? As long as they hit maybe they have a target profit margin that that they want to hit, and they're satisfied with the single player stuff. But I don't know. I've been perfectly happy in the past playing on minority consoles. Like, it's just like I had a GameCube. I loved my GameCube. I had a Wii U. I was excited about it. I'm a guy that was excited about buying the Wii U. So that kind of, as long as I get my experiences on it, I don't care if it's popular. So I understand that there's an effect down the line and that you could go the way of the Dreamcast. Like, I get that. But, for me, like, this is interesting, but it's not going to really affect my personal purchases.
Well, it lends more to DBQ's argument last week, or not argument, but position that or last week or 2 weeks ago, that cost is king, right? Because if you're a person who is in love with the Sony exclusives, which is what we hear, then you're going to buy the PlayStation hardware no matter what, and so Xbox launching on Project xCloud doesn't mean a whole hill of beans.
Right. They're not going to be completely annihilated. I don't think either side is going to like. We're not going to have a Sega situation.
Right. But if you're
No.
but if you're the Call of Duty Madden player, multiplayer, if you play Apex, and for whatever reason you play on PlayStation, right?
You're up for grabs.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, to me, not even up for grabs. It's the. This is why and where Sony wins in a generation, right? Because that set of gamers, the hardware doesn't really matter to them. They just care about their multiplayer competitive games. If one thing is cheaper than the other, then they just go with the cheaper thing.
And that's where, yeah, exactly right. That's
I wouldn't say that they go with the cheaper thing. I'd say they go where their friends are playing.
But I think that the cheaper thing is first until you build up enough of a critical mass, and that's where, I think you're not
synonymous, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
You play where your friends are playing. Your friends are cheap. They're playing where the cheaper thing is, right? So that's where you wind up.
Yeah, I think there's a hand-in-hand aspect to that. Yes, there is a momentum around where your friends are, and that's what PlayStation capitalized on. But that momentum was generated at the release, at launch, because of the $100 price difference. And I think that, you made my point, Agasicles. Yeah, this is what I was kind of chomping at the bit to say, is that big group of, large group of gamers who are on the PlayStation platform at this time are there because it was cheaper and there was a critical mass of where their friends are playing. And that dynamic will be interesting to see if that shifts.
Well, I don't recall. I'm not even sure if I was on the last deep dive, so I don't remember. Did we talk about like the gameplay video from Halo Infinite? Because I've heard some chatter that there was some slight disappointment, or it was underwhelming.
Sure, yes, but we went there. I don't mean to. I guess I appreciate what we're talking about here in terms of kind of the industry analysis aspects of this. Like, Swiss, you're describing a gamer, a traditional video gamer who is looking for experiences versus a more social gamer potentially who is engaged in those environments for the competitive or the social aspects, but they're different markets, and neither is necessarily right or wrong. One is certainly more fluid, I believe, than the other.
Right. My only point is, like, if Halo stumbles out of the gate, I can't imagine that it's going to be like so disappointing that people like stay away from it. Like, I don't really think that this scenario is going to happen. But for the sake of argument, like we're talking a lot about momentum and the zeitgeist and getting a critical mass of players. If Halo stumbles out of the gate, that can really, really impact Microsoft's strategy for a long time, because then Sony gets that swell of, well, I say that Sony would get that swell of players just like the last generation. But if it turns out, that's why I'm so eager to see what the actual final console costs will be.
I think if Halo stumbles out of the gate, those players will go to Fortnite. Those players will go to Call of Duty. They'll go to Apex, right? I mean, I don't know that a stumble by Halo results in a Sony win. I think the stumble by Halo results in a Halo loss. But whether or not that's a Microsoft loss, I'm not sure. And then again, that goes back to how much value add some people put on the streaming aspect, on Game Pass, how much value add people put on the prestige games that you're talking about. And that's where we start slicing this.
Yeah. It gets into, we talked about the Halo demo, but we only talked about our own impressions. The internet impressions hadn't really broken wide yet in this whole diatribe of, people feeling that there's low graphical fidelity and that being conflated with people who don't like the artistic style, which I will argue are two different topics. We hadn't gotten into yet. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, in my opinion.
Well, there's certainly a lot. I think it's going to be a very fun, I think, 3 months from like our perch as like deep, members of the E2KG Deep Dive community. I'll put it that way. So it'll be fun. I'm kind of eager to see how this all breaks out. I do feel like I'm kind of an old man gamer now. Like I feel like the industry is moving away from my taste. I feel like Sony is at least catering to me, but I also feel like Sony is kind of like DirecTV, and it's you know, hey, yeah, they got their people that are faithful customers, but you know, it's gonna dwindle over time, and my style of gaming is not gonna last. But anyway, I think we have time for. You guys want to hit this last story on Sony exclusivity? The Avengers new game being developed by Crystal Dynamics. They announced that Spider-Man will be a PlayStation exclusive follow-on character. So, as you alluded to, Agasicles, Sony, for some of these games that aren't console exclusives, Sony's going for maybe some content exclusives, and hope. I guess that the goal will be to retain interest from for their platform. But is that you? Like I said at the beginning, you two gentlemen are players on both consoles. Would that be something that swings you towards? No pun intended, towards the PlayStation side. DB.
So I would say potentially, not necessarily on the PlayStation side for a console, but as I think about this for, where I'm going to play it on this current generation, certainly makes me think about whether or not this is something whether or not I like the game after playing the open beta, which is the open beta for PlayStation is next week. The open beta for Xbox and PC is 2 weeks from now. It gives me pause about where I'll play this. I know my son is a big Spider-Man fan. That maybe this makes more sense on the PlayStation. I had leaned in the direction of Xbox because I wanted the 4K aspect. I think this ties in with kind of some of the stuff we've been talking about already tonight. Is do we have confirmation that if I buy Avengers on PlayStation 4, that I'm going to be able to play Avengers on PlayStation 5 with the high texture, with the graphical pass that a PlayStation 5 allows for. We know that, I thought, and I'm doing this searching as we go, like, I think it is confirmed that there is a free upgrade from Crystal Dynamics, but that is a factor that plays into this. That again goes back to muddying those waters.
Agasicles, I know you're like, for me, I'm not a big comic guy. I know you are, Agasicles. I'm not sure. Were you pretty psyched about this title, or is it on your radar?
No.
Okay.
No. I have lots of this wouldn't be a world that I'm interested in playing in. I don't find it fun to play personas in a licensed property personas. In an MMO kind of world. Like I would prefer to be in that kind of world where you roll your own character. So, going back to when I was a kid, like I had Marvel Superheroes, the RPG, and I had the DC Universe or whatever, the RPG. I never found those interesting. I always preferred Villains and Vigilantes and Champions and Heroes Unlimited because you created your own character. You wrote your own narrative. So I don't really know who they're going after with this game. But what I was thinking of in the car earlier today is, what's really important to me is I'm really surprised that Disney is allowing this. Because after all of the years and all of the effort to build the MCU and the 23 films and the Infinity Saga and yada, why they would allow their properties to become fragmented across gaming consoles, I don't understand. That's a mentality that got them where they were with the movie studios in the 90s, and I don't understand why they would repeat the same thing here. They just got all their properties back. They just got X-Men back. They just got Fantastic Four back. Why you would only allow Spider-Man on one console? So one thing to keep an eye on is this truly fully exclusive? Is it a timed exclusive? Is it you get it free on PlayStation, but then 2 months later it's available on Xbox, but you have to pay $3.99 or something for it. That'll kind of be the interesting thing.
Do you know what the deadline is for when Sony's exclusivity of Spider-Man as a property runs out? Right, like they still have Spider-Man as the reason that Spider-Man's in the Avengers is was an agreement type of pieces. Like they still have some exclusivity within different realms of property. So yeah, I don't know.
What would be really interesting, what we don't know is it exclusive on Sony because it was somehow tied? Yeah, because it was somehow tied to the Sony Pictures deal. I mean, it was licensed to use that IP. I don't know that was specific to the movie division. So it may have been a corporate license, and that might be why it's on. I don't know.
Lots of backroom pieces here. I will follow up on my own fact checking again that it is a free upgrade from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. That is confirmed.
It all makes my head hurt. So I think that's probably a good place to stop for tonight. So please, that'll do it for our deep dive episode. Of course, next week we alternate every week. So next week will be the GX show where we talk about what we've been playing. And we always lead off with our Pix Plays assignment. And the last Pix Plays was the British invasion. And there's been a lot of British studios in the Microsoft Xbox conference from a couple of weeks ago. And as Agasicles notes, they are of a singular wit and an acquired taste for some. So we're going to play games that were either developed by UK-based studios or put something like engaging with British culture. And whether that be like, taking a place in England or a British character. Hopefully, we have fun while we're doing it. That's not always true, unfortunately, for some of these Pix Plays assignments. Although I will say that that since we've gone to like the theme and we get to pick our own games, usually we've had a lot more fun with it. I kind of enjoyed when we got to assign somebody a game that we knew they'd hate and get to listen to them rant about it. That's
our next theme.
Well, I just know that's how you ended up playing Anthem like 10 times longer than you ever thought you would, DB. So
I'm pretty sure I kept kind of trying that one. Like, I don't know that you guys assigned it to me. It was my own stubbornness.
I hope we do that. Play a game that you hate on the calendar. But until then, next week we're going to be playing some British video games. Agasicles obviously cheating on the homework assignment and playing Forza Horizon 4.
That is by a British studio.
Yeah. DB, you have Dreams or Wipeout Collection. Have you narrowed that down yet?
Yeah, I'll be playing the Dreams. I mean, Dreams from Media Molecule as a British studio. Obviously, Dreams VR has plenty of stuff that wasn't made by Media Molecule, but again, that is a game that they made within that kind of tool set.
Actually, I'll go back on that again. That's by a British studio, and it takes place in England.
Well, it's that's still like a B-. I'm sorry. I'm embracing the assignment, and I've got Sherlock Holmes: Crime and Punishments. You can't get more British than that.
But is that by a British studio?
I don't know, but it's Sherlock Holmes. Like, he's like the Brit, right? I will say though that anytime somebody says Baker Street, I'm ashamed to say the first thing that pops in my head is Basil of Baker Street from The Great Mouse Detective, and not actually Sherlock Holmes. So I'm kind of dating myself there. But anyways, next week, I'm not sure if Prime's scheduled. I always get to this point and realize I should have done my homework and checked and see if he was on the show.
No, it's right there on the agenda. Below the.
Oh, so that's not just a copy and paste thing? That's like legit?
No, that's legit. It's in sync with the actual schedule.
See, I learned today I learned that Agasicles doesn't just copy and paste it. Actually, if all four names are there, there's an intent behind it. Agasicles, DV, Prime, and I'm I'm sorry to say that I will also be on next week's episode. But fortunately, you don't have to have me as a host. I don't think that's not labeled Agasicles.
No, we
So-
want to hear your Ghosts of
No,
Tsushima.
it's on there.
So-
DBQ's hosting, and you and Prime are co-hosting.
Where is that? Oh, in the red beneath
Yes.
it. Okay.
There's a slight chance that I will make a guest appearance because
All right.
I will also be playing Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, you bought it. Can I get? Okay, I won't ask.
You can't get a preview because unfortunately I haven't even booted it yet. I just downloaded it. I'm still in the middle of playing Halo: The Master Chief Collection, so I've been playing Halo Reach and Halo Combat Evolved this week. But I'll start Ghost of Tsushima next week.
All right. Yeah, I've got a lot to say about that game, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, so that'll do it for tonight's deep dive, and we made it. Well, I think we were less than 90 minutes, so that's tight for us, I guess. And 155 episodes in the books. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Keep gaming. Please join us. Have fun. Bye.